Good evening, and welcome to League of Women Voters Presents, the public affairs show that talks about issues that are important to folks in mid-Missouri and beyond. My name's Randy Picht. I'm the Executive Director of the Donald W. Reynolds Journalism Institute at the University of Missouri, and I'll be your host tonight for this July 2017 edition. I'm sitting in for the regular host, Jim Robertson, who was the managing editor of the Columbia Tribune. And tonight, I want to welcome Brandon Alexander, who is a director of elections at the Secretary of State's office. And we're going to talk about something that's in the wheelhouse of the folks that sponsor this event, which is voting. Oftentimes, when I sit in, we talk about other things like infectious disease or police issues and stuff like that. So tonight we're going to be right in the wheelhouse, and I think we're very lucky to have Brandon because we want to get into some of the nuts and bolts about an issue that is very new, really, for the state, and that is the new photo ID law. Mm-hmm. So why don't we start with you just talking about kind of where we are and how we got where we are before we get into some of the very practical points.
Sure. So last November, Missourians voted, 63% of Missourians voted to pass Amendment 6, which allowed for a photo ID requirement for voting. And by doing so, that ushered in some implementing legislation that the Missouri legislature worked on during the last legislative session before this one. And kind of all those inner workings of that legislation are now in effect, that it's after June 1st. And, you know, kind of that's what we're here to talk about tonight. And kind of the one thing that I'll probably say quite a few times, and if you take nothing else away from this evening, is that if you're a registered voter, you can vote under Missouri's new voter ID laws. Okay. So that's kind of a quick run through of how we got to where we are now that it's post June 1. So. All
right, so that's good. So, and we've already had two elections in the state.
Sure.
And
yeah.
But before we talk about kind of how the rollout has gone, sure. Why don't we get right to the point and
sure.
talk about what exactly happened on June 1st?
Yeah, so on June 1st, Missouri's new voter ID law went into effect, and there's kind of two major portions of the law. One, the new ID requirements, but then also B, a provision to help folks who might not have a photo ID obtain a non-driver's license for free. So there's kind of three options under which an individual can vote now that June 1 has come and went and we have the new voter ID laws. And, you know, as I said earlier, if you're registered, you can vote. So when you walk into your polling location, if you're a registered voter and you're heading to the correct polling location, the one that you're registered at, your name's in the book, there's a way for you to receive a ballot before you walk away from your polling location.
Okay. And so let's talk about what's different.
Sure.
And maybe and what folks can expect. I guess the next big election is August, mm-hmm. and then November, everybody gets to try this out.
So November will kind of be a smaller this year, and then kind of the statewide, everyone getting to test their feet will be come the next spring elections next spring.
April.
Mm-hmm,
okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, so just kind of brought along with me
prop.
this evening. Yeah, a prop. So this will be something that voters will see when they walk into their polling locations now. It'll kind of, they might be familiar with a poster that was up that had acceptable forms of identification at the top and had a lot of these same types of IDs on it before June 1. Well, this is the new version of it now that we have a new ID requirement, and you'll see a lot of familiar faces, you might say, on it. So kind of that first option under Missouri's new ID law is that you're walking in with that photo ID. So that can be a Missouri driver's license, a Missouri non-driver's license, a U.S. passport, or a military ID that's issued by the federal government. So that's kind of those option one IDs. You walk in with that, you hand it to your poll worker, they're going to get you checked in, you're going to receive a regular ballot and go ahead and vote. The way way we kind of look at it. We can guarantee that you get a ballot on election day. It's up to the voter to, fill out what they want to, and how they might go about voting their ballot. That's completely up to them in privacy, but we want to make sure that if you're a registered voter, you have that right opportunity to vote on election day. So let's say, you might not have that form of photo ID. Well, that doesn't mean that you're going to get turned away from your polling location. There's other options that allow you to go ahead and vote. So
right.
kind of that.
So you forgot your license, or you
sure. So you have, maybe you don't have a photo ID. Maybe you have your voter registration card that gets sent out by your county clerk or local election authority on you. You can walk in to your polling location. If you don't have that form of photo ID on you at your polling location, any of the forms of ID that you used to use under the old ID requirements, so your bank statement, your utility bill, maybe an out-of-state driver's license, or here in Boone County, something that's very common is that college ID that's issued by a university in Missouri. So you walk in with that ID, you don't have on you that other form of photo ID. You can still present it like you did. Basically what you'll do is you'll sign a statement, and essentially what that statement is saying is that you're John Doe, you're registered at 123 ABC Street. You don't possess that form of photo ID, but you know that you can get one for free, and the state can help you get that for free. You go ahead and sign that statement, sign in on the poll book. That poll worker is going to go ahead and give you a regular ballot, and you vote it just like you always have that regular ballot. Nothing, different about that. Now let's say for some reason, you walk into your polling location, you don't have any form of ID. Maybe you rush to the poll because you're out doing something else, and you're, oh my gosh, it's election day. I need to get to the poll and vote. So you go in, you're a registered voter, you're at the right polling location, you're in that poll book, but you don't have any form of identification on you. You can go ahead and cast a provisional ballot. And this provisional ballot will be available in all elections June 1 moving forward. And essentially what you'll do is, since you don't have any form of ID on you, you can go ahead and fill out that envelope. That'll have your name, the address you're registered at, all your kind of pertinent voter information along those lines. And then you'll go ahead and sign that envelope. It's a paper envelope. It's not, electronic signature. You're going to sign an actual paper envelope. You'll go ahead and get a ballot. You'll vote it. You'll put that ballot into the envelope, and then later on, actually, there's a couple ways that ballot can be counted. So let's say you rush to the polling location in the morning, didn't have your photo ID on you, but you have one at home. You can then come back later in the day on election day and show that photo ID, and that ballot can be counted. But if you don't have the photo ID, or you don't have time because it's getting close to the end of the election hours, you don't have time to come back, that signature that you sign on that envelope, the LEA can take that envelope back, and when they're processing,
the LEA,
so a local election authority. So for many counties, that's your county clerk. In kind of the higher populated areas, they have election boards, so there'll be actual boards of elections that oversee the elections process. They'll be able to match that signature that you signed on that envelope to the signature that you have on file in your voter record. And that process of matching signatures is exactly the same as what they do if you were to, say, sign an initiative petition outside of Walmart, and you sign your name and write down, that you're registered at such and such address. That's the same process as far as matching signatures that they use for initiative petitions. They'll use for this. That signature matches, and that ballot will be counted, and it's required by law to be counted if that signature matches.
And is that a process that has been happening now? Is that how provisional ballots are handled now?
So this new provisional ballot is for an individual that's a registered voter. You might be thinking of, there's another provisional ballot that was brought in by HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, that allowed someone in a federal election, say they weren't in the poll book, they could go ahead and vote that provisional ballot because they, this is where I'm supposed to be, this is where I'm supposed to vote. They could go ahead and fill that out, and then the local election authority could verify that that person was actually supposed to vote there after, polls closed that day. So this is a completely new provisional ballot that will be available in all elections after June 1st. And it's for someone who is a registered voter in the poll book, but has no form of ID to, identify themselves with.
Mm-hmm. And then if somebody comes back, do they physically get their ballot and get to put it into the the machine, or is it just
Sure.
noted and somebody
Sure.
else?
So
does?
there's a couple of options that local election authorities can use. One would be that yes, that voter, the poll worker could go get that envelope for them. They would take take the ballot out of the envelope and go ahead and run it through that central counter, and then everything's good. They actually run it through the counter. Now let's say there are some counties that for their provisional ballots might make copies of regular ballots and strike through the barcode that allows it to be run through the actual central counter. They can set up a form that essentially says, John Doe returned to the polling location with a valid form of ID. The poll workers will both initial it, and then later on when they go to process those envelopes, they can be like, okay, we have the envelope for John Doe. We have this statement that John Doe brought his ID back. We can go ahead and count that ballot without having to match the signature.
So it's a little bit faster.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then what about the voter registration card that comes in the mail? That works the same
that still works as an option to ID. So you can go in with your voter registration card and still vote. There were just yesterday we had an election in St. Louis. There were over 100 folks that didn't have some form of photo ID and used that voter registration card and signed the statement, and then we'll reach out to individuals who sign the statement under option 2 to thank them for voting, because that's the key, is that folks are getting out and voting, but then B, also just reminding them and letting them know that they can get a free ID if they didn't have one to bring with them to the polling location.
Okay, so good. So,
Yeah.
And I want to come back to the election, but
Sure.
before I forget,
Yeah.
does any of this affect the process to become a registered voter?
Sure, yeah, so none of the provisions of Missouri's new voter ID law actually impacted, the registration process. All that the new changes will impact is on-day, in-person voting at your polling location. So the registration process stays the same as it's been. Absentee stays the same. What is impacted is those folks going to the polling location on election day. And the great thing is, if those folks head into the polls on election day are a registered voter, they're going to be able to vote.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the experience so far. You said you had 100 folks use the yellow card.
Sure. Yeah. So
how many people
it's
voted?
Yellow some places.
Okay.
It's white some places.
Right.
Sure.
Okay. Of course. Has to be.
A little bit of everything. No. So in just yesterday's election in St. Louis, that's the second kind of election under the new law that we've seen.
And the first one was?
The first one was down in New Madrid County, a smaller election where a little over 200 people came to vote, and all of them brought their photo IDs except two folks. Two folks had to sign an ID statement. So, but in St. Louis, a little bit bigger as far as number of voters coming out, just shy of about 2,000 voters voted yesterday. And if you total up kind of all the option 1 IDs, about 93% of them voted with some sort of a photo ID. The next big chunk was those voter registration cards, which get sent out by the LEA. And then there were a little over 10, there were 11 folks who voted with some other form of option 2 yesterday in St. Louis. So that's, a great majority of them have that photo ID already. They brought it with them to the polls and voted. And then those folks that voted that option 2, we're going to be reaching out to them to let them know, hey, thank you for voting. We just want to make sure you knew that you could get an ID for free in the state of Missouri now under the new law.
So far 2 elections and 0?
So yesterday there were 3 provisional ballots that were cast.
Out of 2,000?
Out of 2,000, and most of those 3 were folks that, for one reason or the other, said that they wanted to either, test the system just to make sure that all registered voters could vote, and they found out that yes, even if you don't have ID but you're a registered voter, you can vote in Missouri under the new laws.
Well, that's good. So going into these first 2 elections,
Sure.
Is this pretty much what you guys expected, or what do you see going forward in terms of how is this going to be the way it is? I'm sure you would like it to be
Sure.
that way.
So we've been busy traveling the state, to let voters know about the new changes, but also to meet with those county clerks and local election authorities, so that they are prepared. We're prepared for the new changes, to where when they're training their poll workers, they can be giving them that concise message that if someone's registered, they're at the right polling location, they can vote. So we've been busy, kind of doing that, and at most of the gatherings around the state, most folks were like, yeah, I have a photo ID, and we've kind of started to see that with the first couple elections, is that, a great majority of folks have that photo ID and vote with that photo ID, but, when they drafted the legislation, they wanted to do, they wanted to make sure that we're protecting the integrity of our ballots, but then also that if you're registered, that you can vote, and that registered voters weren't turned away just because they didn't have, this specific type of ID. So that's how they kind of came up with these multiple options. And so far, it's been, a great success, and it's been a smooth transition so far.
And is that something that you guys kind of learned from other states, and looked at what other states have done with this? Because it seems like that idea that if you're registered, you can vote is a great way to approach it.
Sure.
And I don't know if other states had issues before you guys came.
Yeah, there's all sorts of, that's the beauty of America, is that there's 50 states, there's kind of 50 incubators as far as how to do things, and other states have taken, different approaches, and this is the Missouri version of it, so this is the show me version of voter ID, and so far it's been a great system, and I think that the legislature did a great job, crafting it in a way to ensure that registered voters are confident when they go that their vote matters and their vote counts, and that registered voters aren't turned away on election day.
That's good. And now you mentioned you're traveling around, and what's kind of the rollout? There's going to be more counties coming up in August.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're going to be busy between now and what state? August, early August?
8th.
August 8th.
Yep. Yeah. So, June 1, this law went into effect, and we've kind of hit the ground running, and we haven't slowed down yet. We've been all over the state of Missouri.
And we appreciate you being here in Boone County with us.
It's great to come north from Jeff City just a little bit and talk about this, because, this is our elections are a very important thing. It's how we, the people, voice our opinion and let the government know how we, care to be governed. And so, the passion is great, for the voting process, and that's kind of what drives us every day, is that this is a very important topic, and to make sure that all registered voters know, despite what they might hear, or maybe what photo ID was in another state, this is what photo ID is in Missouri, and if you're registered, you can vote, and we're going to keep pushing that message wherever and whenever in the state of Missouri. And like you said, there is about half of the counties will have some form of an election. Might not be a county-wide election in August. Myself and the other director of elections will be meeting personally with every county clerk and local election authority who has an election in August before August 8th rolls around, so that, we can walk them through the process, see what questions they have, and also ensuring that they're ready to train their poll workers, so that when folks are walking in, it's a smooth process for them on election day. And we'll continue that, after August 8th. We'll keep hitting all the other counties that we might not have gotten to yet, and we'll keep spreading the message, either through our kind of personal visits that we're doing, groups that are getting together and helping spread the word. The secretary has been all over the state, meeting with senior centers and city halls, anywhere that he can go to help spread the message that if you're registered, you can vote. And we'll keep doing that, not just doing it up till August 8th, we'll keep doing it as we kind of continually transition into this new ID law.
Of course, but you have a lot of people to talk to between now and August 8th, because,
sure,
if you're going to talk to each county clerk, and that's not just a 5-minute chat.
Sure, they're 30 and plus, but no, it's great to visit with all of them, because they're kind of the ones that administer the elections on the front lines. The poll workers are definitely kind of the front lines of the election process. So getting to meet with them and walk through the process. And the nice thing is, any form of ID that you use before June 1st is still an ID that you can use after June 1st. It's just kind of where in the options you fall. And if you walk in and you're a registered voter but you have no form of ID, you still can vote that provisional ballot. So yes, it's a change in the law, but it's not a drastic change that they're not able to kind of transition into smoothly, and that's priority of those meeting with them. But then we're also doing PSAs on radio and TV and in print in areas around the state to let folks know about the changes and how they can find out more. And you know, we well in advance of June 1st rolled out a website, ShowItToVote.com, to kind of be a central resource for folks who might have questions. And now that June 1st has come and went, it's that resource for more information, but it's also an online opportunity for folks who might not have a photo ID to say that they need help getting that photo ID or need help getting that underlying documentation to go and get the free ID, which that's kind of the second leg of the new voter ID law, is that yes, these are the new options, but B, you can get a free ID if you need one for the purposes of voting.
Yeah, you can move up to option 1
Sure.
if you're somewhere down here.
Sure.
And that's ShowIt and the number 2
ShowIt,
to
the number 2,
vote.com.
vote.com. You can also, you know, type in any of the combinations of ShowIt to vote.com, but it's ShowIt, the number 2, vote.com.
And how's the traffic been?
You know, it's been good. So far, there's been folks using the online form to request help, and we've got our elections division that's responding to those requests and helping those folks, answering questions. We've had a lot of kind of just general questions about, you know, what are the new requirements, what's going to change for me on election day. But then we've had a few folks actually request help in getting that underlying documentation, and we've already kind of started the process of helping them obtain that documentation or letting them know where they can go to get that free ID.
Yeah, that's great. So, the biggest surprise in the rollout?
You know, no real surprises so far. It's been a smooth transition, and that's kind of what I know. It's what we expected, because you know, this law was crafted in a way that you know, if for some reason somehow someone doesn't hear about the changes, they walk in with the same ID they've been voting with for many years. They're a registered voter at that polling location. They're still going to be able to vote, and the poll workers are there to kind of help walk them through that process.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And with all the options, there's flexibility.
Sure.
And that's always a good thing,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's great. And you know, like I said, there are all sorts of approaches to photo ID and voter ID around the country, but what we've got right here in Missouri is a great piece of legislation that ensures that, you know, if you're registered, you can vote.
Right. So that's the message. If you're registered, you can vote.
Exactly.
I don't know how many times has that been said on this show.
If you take nothing away, if you take that away, you've got the message in and of itself right there, because that's the way it'll be in Missouri now that this new law is in effect, is that if you're registered to vote, you can vote.
And how many languages can you say that in?
by
the end of this year, probably 5 or 6,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So that's good. Well, I think this has been very helpful. We
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming.
Well, grateful for the opportunity to spread the word, and definitely, you know, it's great to be in Boone County. Thankful for to be in the land of Wendy Norn, and thankful for her years of dedication to this process, and we're definitely grateful for her help in helping spread that message that if you're registered to vote, you can vote.
So there you go. So, and if you have any questions, go to showittovote.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I visited that site. There's lots of good information there, and help if you need it. And just don't forget, if you're registered to vote,
you can vote.
You can vote.
Yep.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.